X radar from Israel for $72 million. 2017, assault rifles, ammunition, and trucks donated by Russia. Machine guns, pistols, and grenade launchers donated by the U.S. worth about $193 million. Small arms donated by China worth about $9 million. 2018, a deal canceled by Duterte in February. 16 helicopters from Canada for $233 million.
Nagbanta po ng giyera si Pangulong Duterte laban sa Canada dahil yan sa tonel-toneladang basura nitong ilang taon nang nakatambak dito sa Pilipinas. Sabi pa ng Pangulo, patatapunan niya ng basura ang Canadian Embassy.
Canadian garbage at the center of a dispute with the Philippines will soon be coming home. The cost? More than $1 million. Environment Minister Catherine McKenna announced that the government has awarded a contract to Bolloré Logistics Canada to remove the garbage by the end of June. According to the tender, it will cost at least $1.14 million to do so. So how did Canada land in this predicament in the first place? The fight dates back to 2013 and 2014. 103 containers were shipped from Canada to Manila, Philippines. The contents were supposed to be recyclable plastics, but upon opening them, locals found an estimated 2,500 tons of household trash, including kitchen waste and used diapers.
We are not a garbage dump of any country, and Canada should recognize that.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper faced calls to take back the trash, but his government called it a, quote, private commercial matter. In 2015, Justin Trudeau made one of his first trips as Prime Minister to Manila. He arrived to screaming fans, but also to questions about why Canada hadn't collected what it dumped there.
I believe there are loopholes here that were allowed to be skirted that we need to make sure we close, both for Canada's interests and for good relationships with our neighbours.
In 2016, a Filipino court ordered Canada to take back the trash, and the Liberal government has said since then that it's working on it.
We also discussed the garbage issue, which I know has been a long-standing irritant, and I committed to him, as I'm happy to commit to you all now, that Canada is very much engaged in finding a solution on that.
But frustration in the Philippines has clearly reached a boiling point, with President Rodrigo Duterte threatening war against Canada if it doesn't clean up its mess immediately.
Loaded the containers to a ship and I will advise Canada that your garbage is on the way. Prepare a grand reception. Eat it if you want to.
It will not be eaten. Minister McKenna's office says the garbage will be treated to meet Canadian safety and health requirements and will be disposed of by the end of this summer. Over to the power panel, of course, with Mark, Amanda, Tim, and Chris. Chris, I'm going to start with you because you were in the Philippines for back when the Prime Minister made that first trip. Yeah,
and he talked about it as being a legal issue. The loophole, you heard him describe it. The Canadian government didn't have the power necessarily to enforce a commercial contract and make them take it back, and the company was bankrupt anyway. Look, a couple of things that I think are worth taking away from this. One is that for Duterte, this is a big win, and somehow he's come out looking like the good guy and Canada the bad guy. This is clearly an issue that should have been dealt with before. I don't understand necessarily the logistics behind all of it of taking back 60, I think, or 60 some of these containers left. But anyway, it's taken too long. And clearly, it's now 4 years or 3.5 years since he made that promise. He talked about it again in 2017. So now it appears that because of yet another threat, we're going to take it with Duterte saying we're going to send it by ship and dump it in Canadian territorial waters, that suddenly we now have a contract in place and are ready to take it. So there you have it. It's an international kind of blemish on Canada's reputation. It's really hard to see how you can lecture others about things like the environment when you have your trash sitting across the ocean somewhere.
That's true. I would also point to some hypocrisy on the part of Duterte, who, yes, looks like a good guy in this and certainly used this to nationalize support around midterm elections, which happened last week, I believe. He isn't exactly the hero of most stories, though, to be fair. Amanda, what do you think?
Well, yeah, and despite the fact that this was originally obviously a commercial, a private matter, and that's why the Harper government, I think, refused to deal with it at the time that it happened. Now we're many years later and it becomes a public matter because we have the threat from the Philippines of actually dumping all this garbage in our waters, or the equivalent of all this garbage in our waters. So obviously the federal government, who had made the promise to clean it up, is forced to really, put the gas on it and make sure that trash was brought over immediately. And I think some people really look at the price tag of a contract like this and they say, $1 million that go to bringing this trash back. But I think the alternative, the idea that trash of that magnitude could be dumped in our water, obviously is not a palatable alternative. So this was the right thing to do. We have to remove the garbage. We have to take care of our mess.
Could it have been a bit cheaper, though, perhaps, if the government had acted as quickly as it initially promised to do something about it?
It was tendered, so you would imagine that, the best contract was awarded at the best price. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to gamble with the idea that trash like that is going to end up in our water. We have to pay the price for it.
Of course, I'm saying basically, Tim, that they had promised, like Chris mentioned, back in 2015 to do something about it.
But Vashi, you're rummaging through the trash now.
I knew it.
It's not easy. What? The two of you didn't do it. Like, how can we talk about this seriously? I mean, Duarte's kind of like Oscar the Grouch over there. He's come out of the trash can and he wants somebody to take the trash that's rummaging around away. I mean, this is a silly story. It is embarrassing to Canada. I'm surprised that Duarte didn't encourage the Prime Minister to get into the ring with Manny Pacquiao, the Filipino boxing champion, and change the story into great dynamics. I mean, it's I don't know. How does this happen? What does it mean, Vashi? I don't know. I don't have a clue. I failed you today. This is just awful.
Thank you. Mark, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I'm surprised it took so long, and it just seems to have festered and festered. I'd be curious to see what they're going to do in future to prevent this from happening, because, as was mentioned, the company involved no longer exists. And, we see a version of this here in Alberta with liability management on, orphan wells and that kind of thing. And I think it's incumbent on the government to, yes, clean up the mess and deal with it. Should have been done sooner. But also, what are they going to do in future to prevent this? Because even though it was a private company, at the end of the day, the government and we as taxpayers end up paying for the cleanup.
Well, it was supposed to be recyclable plastics and those sorts of things, not garbage that was going to rot for 4 years. But I go back to my point. Canada has tried to take a very principled stand on the international stage around environmental issues, and yet has taken 4 years and suddenly was able to let a contract and now announce that it's being his garbage is coming back when threatened again by this strong-arm dictator of Philip. I should call him a dictator, but this guy who deserves no sympathy out of all of this. So it's coming back. It will be disposed of properly. And to Mark's point, it is interesting. There is an international convention about sending your garbage to developing countries. I think Canada and other countries are going to have to look very closely at what commercial contractors do to ensure that what they say they are shipping someplace is in fact what they are shipping someplace.
Yeah, and the point about liability is interesting too, and the example around orphan wells is an interesting one. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's certainly, what do you do when the company goes bankrupt, right?
You just shut the lid on it all there, didn't you? thinking about you. Well done.
Yeah, we're just gonna close the lid and throw the trash on this right now. Thanks everybody. Thanks so much to the Power Panel. Thanks to Tim Powers, Amanda Alvaro, Mark McQuaig-Boyd, and Chris Hall.
At the risk of being shot down, the numbers of people who have been killed on the streets of the Philippines since you came to power 6 weeks ago have risen to around 1,000. Now, I know you have been contemptuous of your critics, but they are accusing you of unleashing a national death squad. Where is this going to end? Because some are saying that the social fabric of the Philippines is at risk here.
Good. That's a very good question. Because the other past, in the distant past, no police was ever willing to really work and risk his life. You know, it was a practice before. That's why I said I take full responsibility. You know why? Because they are now encouraged and even brave enough to have a shootout. The standard practice in the system of government is that when you accuse him, they would always file a counter charge and say that due process or that they were unarmed and anything, any answer that could give a leverage. And ordinarily, and you can check this out in the courts, they have to use that leverage against the poor policeman. Now, remember in this country, no lawyer is provided for the policemen and the other men and the security officers when they get into trouble with the law. They are left at the mercy on their own. That was the policy before, and in the previous ones, they are left behind. So when I was mayor, I told them, go ahead, do your duty. But if you feel that you're in carrying out your duty, you will get killed. My God, shoot him first. And they were protected here, and there were cases filed, and I provided the lawyer. And for the time that they are suspended, that is why they are afraid. They face charges in court, then at the same time, when they are accused, they lose the job because they are suspended. And for the time that they are suspended, and the hearing of cases can take you to eternity, as low as it can ever be, the family is not without food.
But with respect, sir, you as a lawyer know better than any of us how important this principle of innocent until proved guilty is.
Look, Padilla said 2 years ago, there are 3 million addicts in this country. That was the last figure. Nobody cared to find out. Now it's my time. So, 2 years ago, between 2 years ago and now, how many do you think were hooked into drugs? Let us give it incremental increase of about, just be liberal about 700,000. So 3,700,000. And the confirmed 600,000 now was surrendered and took the test for drug addiction. How do you call it? Just a problem? Is just a police problem? Or is it really a crisis for this country? It's not even epidemic, my friend. It is pandemic. So what am I supposed to do as a president? Empower the military and the police, for after all, they are there to protect the integrity and preserve the people of the Philippines.
At the risk of gun law, sir.
It can happen. It happens in America. They're shooting the blacks there. It shows on TV. What's the difference between America and the Philippines? Nothing. So what is surprising here is surprising to us. We say policemen, they're shooting a black guy there. How many times had it happened in the past? That's why you have the violent demonstration. So, would it surprise you and me? Almost the same. 1 case only, 3 cases here. So what? It involves the same principle. Say for every 1 black there dead, you have about 5 here. And so, does it make this world more livable because there is less killing? When you shoot a black there dead, what is that? Is that not appalling? When you bomb Syria and Iraq and you kill communities and you kill children and old people and hospital, what is it? And why is it that United States is not doing anything? I do not read anybody in that stupid body complaining about the stench there of that. Look at the iconic boy that was taken out from the rubble. And he was made to sit in the ambulance and we saw it. So what's the difference? Life of a criminal or maybe he was really robbed out? We cannot discount it. But what do you think the Americans did to the black people there? Is that not robbing out also? I say, well, it was just 1 community there, 1 state of America. Well, but you have there about 10. So what's the difference? Are we here for the counting or the basic principles of human rights? Almost the same.
Okay, thank you, sir.